All right, well, it is 6 o'clock, so I will call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order, uh, and we will move to uh, item number 2, which is the roll call. So, Madam Secretary, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Pritsos,
Here.
Commissioner West,
Here.
Commissioner Andriola,
Present.
Commissioner Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Kramer,
Present.
Commissioner Rawson is absent. We will make note if he joins us. Commissioner Reed,
Here.
Assistant City Attorney Brandon Sendall,
Here.
Assistant Community Services Director Armando Ornelas.
Here.
All right, so we will move on to item number 3. This is the first of our public comments. So, Madam Secretary, could you please read a meeting announcement, and then we will open public comment.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I would like to take a minute to share how to speak during public comment this evening. There are 3 separate public comment periods associated with tonight's agenda. The Commission will take general public comment during agenda items 3 and 9. In addition, the Commission will take public comment specific to public hearing item number 6, which is an amendment to a conditional use permit associated with PCN 19-0040. If you wish to speak during any of these public comment periods, you will need to call in, or you can access the Zoom link that is provided on the website. It is also shown here on this slide that we are sharing. The call-in number is 1-669-900-6833. The meeting ID number is 917-2859-2638. This will join you by audio, and you will then be prompted by either the chair or the secretary. Press *9 on your phone and you will be able to speak. Several emails have been received regarding the public hearing item number 6 on this evening's agenda. Those who requested that they be read aloud into the record, they will be read, beginning with that public comment period, followed by any live speakers that we may have that wish to speak. These emails will also be given 3 minutes per NRS 241020. The dial-in numbers will be repeated at the beginning of each public comment period, so please be prepared to either write them down or be ready to join by Zoom link if you have not already done so.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak at this time?
We have no requests to speak.
All right, and with that, I will close public comment, and we'll move on to item number 4, which is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Chair Pritsos, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Any seconds?
I'll second it.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Reed and a second by, I think, Commissioner Andriola beat you to it. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, may we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Pritsos,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Andriola,
Aye.
Commissioner Carey,
Aye.
Commissioner Kramer,
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson is absent. Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. So we will move on to item number 5, approval of minutes. So we'll start with the review and possible approval of minutes of the March 16th, 2021 study session meeting. Can I get a motion?
Chair Pritsos, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 16th, 2021 study session meeting.
All right, thank you. Any second?
Mr. Chair, I will second that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Reed and a second by Commissioner Kramer. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, Madam Secretary, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Pritsos,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Andriola,
Aye.
Commissioner Carey,
Aye.
Commissioner Kramer,
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson is absent. Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. So we'll move on to review and possible approval of the minutes of the March 18th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Can I get a
Mr.
motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yep, Commissioner Kramer.
I move to approve the minutes of the March 18th Planning Commission meeting.
All right, thank you. Any seconds?
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Kramer and a second by, I'm going to give this one to Commissioner West. Any further discussion? Nope, seeing none. Madam Secretary, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Pritzos.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Ayala.
Aye.
Commissioner Carey.
Aye.
Commissioner Kramer.
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson is absent. Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. We will move on now to public hearing items. We only have one tonight, so it'll be item number 6, PCN 19-0040, consideration of and possible actions on a request to amend a conditional use permit to increase the disturbance area to allow development of a site that is 10 acres in size or larger with slope gradients of 10% or greater over 25% or more of the site, which is 421.58 acres in size and generally located at 555 Highland Ranch Parkway, Sparks, Nevada, in the SF6 and MF2 zoning districts.
Thank you, Chair Pritzos. For the record, I'm Sienna Reed with the Planning Division, and I'll be presenting this item this evening. I do have a presentation that I need to share, so give me just a quick moment. All right, before I get started, I do want to confirm that you can see the first slide of this presentation for the Five Bridges conditional use permit amendment.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so as noted, this is a request to amend the Five Bridges conditional use permit for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges. The request proposes to increase the allowed disturbance area to allow for the development of the entire Five Bridges project site. The Five Bridges project site totals 421.58 acres in size and is located west of Pyramid Way and north of Highland Ranch Parkway, as you can see outlined in red on this slide. Land to the west, east, and south of the Five Bridges project site is currently vacant. Land to the north of the site is characterized by large lots between 10 and 20 acres in size that are mostly developed with residential uses. The Five Bridges project site is subject to a development agreement that was approved in 2018. That agreement addresses permitted uses, the minimum and maximum number of residential units that may be constructed on the site, required infrastructure needed to serve the development, the maximum amount of land that can be disturbed for grading activities, and minimum open space requirements. The conceptual land plan on this slide shows the arrangement of anticipated future development on the Five Bridges site. And as you can see, development is organized into 10 villages. To date, from a background perspective, 2 tentative maps have been approved within Five Bridges. The first is a 460 lot single family subdivision encompassing villages 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. Those villages are generally located in the central portion of the Five Bridges project site, and that subdivision was approved in May of 2020. The second is an 86 lot townhome subdivision for Village 1A that's located in the southern portion of Five Bridges, and that subdivision was approved in February of this year. For a little bit more background, in May of last year, the City Council also upheld the Planning Commission's decision on appeal to approve a conditional use permit for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges. A conditional use permit, or CUP, is required prior to developing sites that are larger than 10 acres in size and have slopes of 10% or greater over 25% or more of the site. And the Five Bridges project site meets those criteria. This slide shows the disturbance area for the approved CUP that's currently active. The currently approved disturbance area encompasses a 138.13 acre portion of the Five Ridges site where naturally occurring slopes are present, which on this slide is the area of the site that's illustrated with the slope analysis. As you can see, the approved disturbance area includes natural slopes in portions of villages 1A and 1B at the southern portion of Five Ridges, natural slopes within villages 2 and 3, 4, 6, and 7, generally in the center of the Five Ridges project site, and all or portions of villages 8, 9, and 10 located in the north and northwest portions of Five Ridges. Areas of the site that were previously disturbed due to mining operations and roadway construction are exempt from CUP disturbance area calculations pursuant to the development agreement, and those are generally in the central portion of the project site. So consistent with the code and the development agreement, the applicant at this time is requesting an amendment to the approved CUP to increase the disturbance area for natural slopes by a total of 19.8 acres. If approved, the disturbance area for natural slopes would increase from 138.13 acres to 157.93 acres. The 19.8 acre increase is located in the northwest portion of the site within villages 8 and 9, and then also in limited areas on the north sides of villages 1A, 1B, and then also village 10. This request, it's important to note, also includes a review of grading plans for villages 1A, 1B, 8, 9, and 10 that were not provided with the currently approved CUP. Per code, substantial material changes to a project require a CUP amendment. These grading plans do constitute a substantial material change, as the proposed grading will materially impact surrounding properties. So the scope of this review for the CUP amendment tonight includes grading plans for villages 1A, 1B, 8, 9, and 10, and is not limited to just the 19.8 acre area where an increase to the disturbance area for naturally occurring slopes is proposed. From a broad perspective, to develop the Five Ridges project site, the grading plans, which are shown on this slide in a relatively small scale, show the applicant is proposing to cut existing hilltop and ridge features and use the resulting fill material to create building paths for future residential development. Fill will be used to fill natural depressions, expand ridges in the north and west portions of the Five Ridges site, and create elevated building paths in the southern portion of Five Ridges. And I'll go into more detail on the proposed grading with the next couple of slides here. This first slide illustrates proposed grading in the southern portion of Five Ridges for villages 1A and 1B. For village 1A, fill will be used to create a building pad at an elevation that's similar to the Five Ridges Parkway roundabout that provides access to village 1A. The building pad will be situated between 50 and 65 feet above Highland Ranch Parkway. Village 1B generally slopes down from north to south. The northern portion of the village will be cut, and fill will be used to create a building pad that on the western side of the site is at a similar elevation to Highland Ranch Parkway. However, on the eastern side of the building pad, it will sit approximately 15 feet above Highland Ranch Parkway. This slide shows a cut fill map that illustrates proposed grading in the north and west portions of Five Ridges. This grading is proposed to accommodate villages 8, 9, and 10, with the cuts shown in red and orange and fills shown in blue and green. So to start off, existing slopes in the west and northeast portions of Village 8, and Village 8 is located in this general area that I'm identifying with my cursor. Those slopes will be cut and fill material will be used in the northwest and southern portions of Village 8 to create a building pad that generally slopes upward from east to west. Fill slopes spanning up to 40 feet in elevation will be created on the south side of Village 8 and fill slopes spanning up to 50 feet in elevation will be created on the northwest side of Village 8. For Village 9, which slopes downward from south to north and is located in this general location of the project site that I'm circling again with my cursor. Existing slopes in the southern portion of Village 9 will be cut, and fill material will be used in the north and northwest portions of Village 9 to create a building pad that generally slopes upward from east to west. At their longest points, fill slopes on the north side of Village 9 will span between 40 and 90 feet in elevation. An access road to maintain sanitary sewer and storm drain infrastructure is also proposed within the fill slope located on the north side of Village 9 in this general location. Depending on its location, this access road sits between 20 and 70 feet above the toe of the proposed fill slope. Moving on to Village 10, which is shown on the eastern portion of this slide and generally circled by my cursor. For Village 10, as proposed, existing slopes in the west and east portions of the village will be cut, and fill material will be used in the center and along the perimeter of Village 10 to create a building pad that slopes upward from west to east until the central portion of Village 10, where it then slopes downward from west to east. And at their longest points, fill slopes on the north side of Village 10 will span between 15 and 40 feet in elevation, and retaining walls may be included in the central portion of Village 10. So overall, the grading plans provided with this CUP amendment request illustrate that existing hilltop and ridge features located in the northern portion of the Five Ridges project site will be cut, and fill material will be used to expand the ridge north of Villages 9 and 10 and west of Villages 8 and 9. Cross sections were provided by the applicant to illustrate this grading in 2 dimensions. Cross section A, which is in this general location, runs north to south through Villages 8 and 9. Cross section B also runs north to south through Villages 1B, 2, 6, and 10. And cross section C runs alternatively east-west through Villages 8, 9, 6, and then 7. This slide shows each of the 3 cross sections. So just to walk through them, starting at the top, cross section A shows that the building pad in the central portion of Village 9 will be located approximately 530 feet away from the northern property line of Five Ridges. In the middle of this slide, we have cross section B. It is showing that the building pad in the central portion of Village 10 will be located approximately 42 feet away from the Five Ridges northern property line, which is shown in this location. And then at the bottom, cross section C shows the western portion of the building pad for Village 8 is adjacent to a portion of the Five Ridges property where common open space is anticipated. And that's why we don't have a property line shown in this particular spot. Graded slopes of 2 to 1 or 50% are proposed within Villages 1A, 1B, 8, 9, and 10. And then graded slopes of 1.5 to 1 or 66% are also proposed within Villages 1A and 1B. As you can see on this slide, there are several slope treatments that are proposed to stabilize the graded slopes. Fill slopes with a gradient of 2 to 1 at the perimeter of the Five Ridges project site are proposed to be stabilized with a revegetated bonded fiber matrix, and that's shown on this slide in green. Cut and fill slopes with a gradient of 2 to 1 that are planned within future lots, and then also surrounding Village 1B. Those are proposed to be stabilized with riprap, and those areas are shown in pink. Bedrock cut slopes, again with that gradient of 1.5 to 1, those slopes don't require mechanical stabilization, and they are shown in yellow and proposed in the northern portions of Village 1A and then also 1B in this location. Before transitioning to the code standards and findings that the Planning Commission needs to consider tonight, this slide provides additional visual representation of the project site as requested by Commissioner Carey during the study session on this item. The picture on the left is taken from the intersection of Dolores Drive and Murray Way, and it's looking south. And so the ridge that you can see here would be the general location of Village 9. The picture on the right is taken from the intersection of Katrina Way and Dolores Drive, and also the view is looking south. And so the ridge that you can see in this general location is the, again, general location of Village 10. All right, so transitioning to those code standards for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges, and the findings applicable to conditional use permits that the commission needs to consider tonight. We'll start off with the standards in Sparks Municipal Code section 20.04.011 that governs development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges. And from an order perspective, we'll go through standards C through G, and then come back to the design policies in B. So starting off here with the grading standards, these standards establish the total area of a site that may be disturbed based on a slope analysis. As discussed earlier, the development agreement exempts the 136-acre portion of the site that was previously disturbed due to mining operations and roadway construction. So for the portion of the site where naturally occurring slopes are present, the grading standards establish a maximum allowed disturbance area of 161.69 acres. Except for the disturbance of slopes of 30% or greater, these standards don't limit the area that can be disturbed in any single slope category. And as you can see in this table, the proposed disturbance area of 157.93 acres is less than the maximum allowed disturbance area of 161.69 acres. Even though we have the area proposed to be disturbed in the 25 to 30%, and then the 30% or above slope categories being slightly higher than specified in the standards, that's again because we have the overall maximum amount of disturbance area being set. The applicant is, however, proposing to disturb 29.56 acres in the 30% or above category. And so 59.12 acres must be preserved as open space. So that's a 2-to-1 ratio. The agreement requires that no less than 120 acres of the site be preserved as open space, and that 59.12 acres required to be preserved due to the disturbance of slopes of 30% or greater can be counted in satisfying that requirement. Additionally, it's important to note with this table that adding the proposed 157.93 acre disturbance area for naturally occurring slopes to the 136 acre portion of the site that was previously disturbed results in a total developable area of 293.93 acres. And that's below the maximum total area of 298 acres that can be disturbed pursuant to the development agreement. Moving on to standards D through G of Sparks Municipal Code section 20.04.011 that you can see on this slide. For D, erosion and sedimentation control measures address temporary erosion and sedimentation during construction and required bonding. Compliance with these standards is required prior to the issuance of a grading permit. For E, areas disturbed due to the grading of the site must be landscaped and or revegetated to maintain the slope and prevent erosion. The slope treatment plan shown earlier indicates the applicant's approach to doing so, and condition 4 requires that this standard be met. For F, required open space areas must remain undisturbed. Condition 5 requires the applicant to demonstrate with each grading permit that the appropriate amount of open space is being protected and left undisturbed within 5 ridges. Additionally, G identifies hilltops and ridgelines that have been designated as significant and requires additional development setbacks from these hilltops and ridgelines. Within the Five Ridges project site, no hilltops or ridgelines are designated as significant by the city. And while no additional development setbacks are required pursuant to this section of code, Condition 6 does impose additional setbacks for two-story homes and height limitations for accessory structures along the perimeter of villages 8, 9, and 10 to demonstrate sensitivity to the terrain and ultimately reduce visual impacts of the Five Ridges development. All right, so as noted, circling back to the design principles, of which there are 4. The first requires a site be analyzed for its design constraints and relates to the maximum amount of land area that can be disturbed on slopes with gradients between 15 and 30%. And that was previously discussed. The second design policy indicates that development must be designed with consideration for limiting aesthetic degradation of the site, as well as erosion, sedimentation, and other hazards. As discussed earlier in this presentation, bonded fiber matrix, riprap, and bedrock cut slopes are proposed to stabilize the graded slopes. The city engineer has reviewed the submitted plans and determined the proposed slope stabilization treatments will limit erosion, sedimentation, and other hazards. And Condition 7 requires final erosion control and sedimentation transport designs be approved by the city engineer with each final map application. To limit aesthetic degradation of the site, Condition 4 requires 90% ground cover be achieved with landscaping or revegetation within 3 years for all development exclusive of the bedrock areas. And Condition 8 requires retaining walls. Even though we don't have them proposed on the plan, they may be used. Those retaining walls must be designed to blend into the surrounding natural landscape. For design policy 3, which indicates that long slopes with sharp transitions are undesirable. Here, graded slopes with a gradient of 2 to 1 or 50% are proposed at the perimeter of the Five Ridges project site. In other words, the exterior slopes associated with villages 1A, 1B, 8, 9, and 10. Those fill slopes for village 1A that span between 50 and 65 feet in elevation will be visible from Highland Ranch Parkway and Pyramid Way. Fill slopes west of villages 8 and 9 that span up to 50 feet in elevation are proposed adjacent to land within the Five Ridges project site. And village 9 and 10 fill slopes that span between 50 and 90 feet in elevation will be visible from properties located north of the Five Ridges site. The longest fill slope, spanning up to 90 feet in elevation, is proposed north of village 9 and contains, as discussed, an access road for the maintenance of utilities. The grading plans submitted with this CUP amendment request show that those graded slopes will be contoured and the toe of those slopes will be rounded. And both of those techniques generally support finished grading that resembles natural landforms. However, due to the length and the visibility of slopes proposed at the perimeter of the Five Ridges project site, Condition 3 is amended to require additional design techniques that provide horizontal relief and are required to reduce the visual impact of long slopes. Those techniques include the use of variable slope gradients. That would be something like a mix of 2 to 1, 3 to 1, and 4 to 1 slopes, and or other mitigation techniques such as embedding natural boulders that are no greater than 1 foot in diameter. Design policy 4 indicates that buildings should be designed and placed on the site so as to visually complement each other and the natural landforms of the site, and that the placement of buildings on or near hilltops or ridges must show a high degree of sensitivity to the terrain and its visual impact. As previously discussed, the grading plans indicate that existing hilltop and ridge features located in the northern portion of the Five Ridges project site will be cut, and fill material will be used to expand the ridge north of villages 9 and 10 and west of villages 8 and 9. Building houses along ridge lines as is proposed in villages 8 and 9 as well as 10 is not inherently sensitive to the terrain or visual impact. However, development along ridge lines typically requires less grading, that is, the less movement of earth than developing on the slope of a hill. Property that is located west of villages 8, and 9 is owned by the Highland Ranch Homeowners Association and zoned open space by Washoe County. It contains topographical features that will buffer the visual impact as viewed from the west of development in villages 8 and 9. However, development in these villages will be visible from the northwest corner of the Five Ridges site where common open space is anticipated. The Five Ridges project site is at a higher elevation than the area located north of villages 9 and 10. The proposed building pads will accommodate the construction of homes and buildings that are visible from lands to the north of Five Ridges. And here, Design Policy 4 does not prohibit the construction of homes or buildings on air ridge lines. Instead, it requires that the CUP amendment request demonstrate how the proposed development will show a high degree of sensitivity to the terrain and its visual impact. Condition 6 currently addresses ridgeline sensitive design with the requirement that homes or buildings constructed on or near ridgelines show that high degree of sensitivity to the terrain by using earth tone colors and roof lines designed to blend with the natural environment. However, it's important to note that Condition 6 in its current form was developed to address less ridgeline development than is proposed with the CUP amendment request. Based on the submitted grading plans, somewhere in the range of 120 lots or so will be located at the perimeter of villages 8, 9, and 10, where grading will expand the ridges to accommodate homes with rear yards at the edge of those ridges. Villages 8, 9, and 10 are located on land that is zoned SF6, and this zoning district allows homes up to 30 feet in height to be constructed 20 feet away from rear property lines. Detached accessory structures and dwelling units may not exceed the height of the main home, but are permitted closer to the rear property line than homes. Detached accessory structures are required to have a 3 or 5 foot setback from rear property lines. And so those would be things like a detached garage or a detached shed. And a 10-foot setback, which is a little bit larger, is required from the rear property line for detached accessory dwelling units, which include a full additional accessory dwelling unit. So to mitigate the visual impact of homes and structures constructed on ridgelines in a manner that demonstrates that high degree of sensitivity to the terrain and its visual impact, Condition 6 is amended to require development at the perimeter of villages 8, 9, and 10. And those are the areas that you can see highlighted in pink on the map on this slide. For those areas, it requires an increase to the minimum rear yard setback for 2-story homes. So that increase would be from 20 feet to 30 feet. It also requires a limitation on the height of detached accessory structures and detached accessory dwelling units to a maximum of 15 feet, which is half of what is allowed by the regular zoning district. These requirements ultimately will reduce the visual impact of future development by setting back those tallest buildings, those 2-story homes, farther from their rear property line compared with standard setback requirements, and then limiting the height of those accessory structures and dwellings that could be constructed in rear yards in the future. So moving on to our general conditional use permit findings, the first that we have is C1, and that relates to compliance with the comprehensive plan. As proposed, increasing the allowed disturbance area as proposed by the CUP amendment request will enable development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges within the entire Five Ridges project site. This supports goal H2 and policy H2 by facilitating a mix of housing types consistent with the agreement, as well as the comprehensive plan land use designations that are present on the site. And those allow for single family and multifamily uses. The adopted development agreement details how city services will be provided to the site at acceptable service levels that complies with policy CF1. And for areas with slopes of 15 to 30%, policy RC 2028 indicates that total disturbance areas should be limited and that hillside adaptive architecture techniques should be utilized. Those techniques include, but are not limited to, the construction of structures on existing natural grade, split level foundations, height restrictions, and other similar techniques. If this amendment to the conditional use permit is approved, the portion of the Five Ridges site with naturally occurring slopes that could be disturbed is less than the maximum amount of land area that can be disturbed pursuant to code and is memorialized in the development agreement. And that complies with policy RC 28. As amended, condition 6 also recommends that increased setback for two-story homes and height limitations for accessory structures to further comply with policy RC 28. Our next finding, finding C2, requires compatibility with existing or permitted uses of adjacent properties. Land to the west, east, and south of the Five Ridges project site, as I've mentioned, is currently vacant. While commercially designated land to the south could be developed in the future, lands to the west and east are planned for open space. Development of the Five Ridges project site with residential uses conforms with the comprehensive plan land use categories and zoning districts present on the site, which were found to be compatible with adjacent properties. Not only the uses or the properties that are zoned and planned for commercial, but also those that are zoned and planned for open space, and the properties to the north of the Five Ridges project site that allow for a minimum lot size of 8 dwelling units per acre. The proposed conditions of approval are intended to mitigate the visual impacts of development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges, and increase the compatibility of the Five Ridges project with surrounding land uses and adjacent properties. Finding C3, which is next on this slide, focuses on impairment of natural resources and the population that can be supported with available natural resources. The CUP amendment request proposes to increase the disturbance area for Five Ridges. That will support the construction of the Five Ridges development, and staff does not believe that approval of this CUP amendment would result in any impacts that impair the availability of natural resources or the region's ability to support its population. Moving on, finding C4 focuses on how identified impacts of the project are addressed. Here, staff identified ridgeline development, fencing, and the maintenance access road on the north side of Village 9 as project impacts. So we've discussed it quite a bit, but just to sum up, for ridgeline development, the building paths proposed in villages 8, 9, and 10 support the construction of homes on ridgelines. As previously discussed, condition 6 is amended to mitigate the visual impact of structures on the perimeter of villages 8, 9, and 10, with that increased rear yard setback and height limitations for accessory structures. Additionally, condition 3 requires cut and fill slopes be recontoured and revegetated to result in that natural appearance and ensure areas are not visually obtrusive. Fill slopes that are located at the perimeter of villages 8, 9, and 10 must also provide that additional horizontal relief. For fencing, a preliminary fencing plan was not provided with the CUP amendment request. However, to further mitigate the visual impact of development at the perimeter of villages 8, 9, and 10, condition 9 requires fencing located on the rear lot lines must be at least 75% open construction. So that would prevent solid fencing. You would really be looking for something more akin to an open type of metal fencing or perhaps fencing constructed of another material. Also, the cross-section provided for the maintenance access road north of Village 9 shows the road will be 12 feet in width and include a guardrail for safety purposes. Condition 10 requires the color and material of this guardrail be designed to blend with the natural environment, so as again not to ensure that it's not visually obtrusive. So as proposed and conditioned, all impacts are addressed. Lastly, finding C5 requires public noticing be given in compliance with code and state law. This planning commission meeting functions as the public hearing required by Nevada revised statutes, as well as Sparks Municipal Code. Public notice of this hearing was published in the Reno Gazette Journal on March 31st. In addition, 46 notices were mailed to owners of property within 1,000 feet of the subject site on March 31st. Staff received 2 informational requests on this item prior to the staff report being published. And since it's been published, staff has received 10 written public comments, and 2 phone calls in opposition to this item. In terms of a recommendation, staff is recommending approval of the Five Ridges conditional use permit amendment with 10 conditions. And you have a motion to that effect on the slide and in your staff report. And so with that, I'll conclude my presentation and be available for follow-up questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you very much, Sienna. Are there any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sienna, I had a technical question regarding finding C3 and natural resources. The staff report indicates that it will not impact natural resources. I was curious with respect to hillsides and ridgelines, aren't those natural resources that would be impacted with this proposal? Is the finding kind of more of the availability of natural resources, or is it? I'm trying to wrap my head around that finding.
Let me go ahead and bring it back up just so everybody can be on the same page as to what the finding is. All right, so finding C3 does have 2 components. It has the potential impairment of natural resources and the total population that available natural resources will support without unreasonable impairment considered. And so when well, it has 2 components. If you do need to kind of consider them in conjunction with each other. The natural resources that are needed to support a total population, those are things like water, the availability of also, well, not really a natural resource, sorry, it's going to sewer, but also air quality is another natural resource. So it's really, what do you need to have to support that population? Certainly, existing slopes are topographical features, and ridges can be considered as having scenic resource aspects. However, in the Sparks Municipal Code, what we have done is identify those slopes and, well, hilltops and ridgelines that are considered as significant and worthy of that, or not worthy, but where you have that additional 15-foot setback that's required. Certainly, we have other code sections that require us to mitigate the impact of development on topographical features, including hilltops and ridgelines. That's really the situation that we're here to consider tonight with this particular request.
Thank you, Sienna. Follow up, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that explanation. So, kind of the first part of the finding, potential impairment of natural resources. I know the comprehensive plan has several goals and policies with respect to hillside development and protecting those ridgelines. So, is it staff's interpretation of this finding and how we're applying it that only applies to ridgelines that are included in our code as protected?
So do you have a particular policy in the comprehensive plan that you're referencing, just so that we're all on the same page?
Sure. I think it's RC 28. And I got it pulled up here. RC 28, and so it's talking about limit the amount of land area that may be disturbed for development on natural slopes within gradients of 15 to 30%, and promote hillside adaptive architectural techniques is essentially what it kind of goes to. There's also policy RC 30, and that's requiring new development to preserve and protect significant natural amenities. And it gives an example of rock outcroppings. And then there's policy RC 32, which is require development to minimize hillside scarring and impacts. I bring those up just because, you know, the potential impairment of natural resources, and we have a specific section within our code and specific. I'm just curious if it's not a protected, then we just kind of try to mitigate it as much as possible, or if it's not identified in the code as a protected ridgeline, we're okay. Just trying to wrap my head around that.
Yeah, so, you know, from the policy side of things, as it relates to the comprehensive plan, we have provided an analysis of policy RC 28. And as it relates to that policy, we have limitations in terms of the land area that can be disturbed when you get into those steeper slopes that are 15 to 30%. And then we have the encouragement that hillside adaptive techniques be utilized. And so both of those particular aspects are being met with the proposed conditional use permit. We also do have to look to our code in terms of those city identified significant hilltops and ridge lines. And so, you know, that section of the code is being used in conjunction with this policy to support its implementation from that regulatory standard perspective. And then to your question in terms of other policies that might be applied, I mean, we certainly do have policy RC 30 that discusses natural amenities and unique features. It doesn't necessarily identify that those are the slopes themselves. They are things like drainage ways and outcroppings. And so that is why staff didn't necessarily include an analysis of that policy in the staff report that was prepared. And so ultimately, you know, in evaluating this request, we have topographical features, and those topographical features may provide scenic resources on private that are, you know, in essence viewed from other locations, but on private lands. However, unless they are identified in code as being significant hilltops or ridgelines, we have to evaluate them under the standard of the design policy 4 that really asks us to consider how the proposed request is showing sensitivity to the natural terrain, and then also limiting impacts of development, or limiting the visual impacts of the development.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Carey. Are there any other questions for staff at this time? I have a real quick question, Sienna. And I think we discussed this when we talked about this project last time, but in terms of the total area that is allowed to be like disturbed, the 25 to 30% and then the 30% plus for both higher than what was allowed. So are we allowing that because the total is less than the total area that would be allowed? I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull up the table. I think it's a little bit easier to walk through it when you've got the actual table in front of you. Right, so the way code works for disturbance of slopes, hilltops, and ridges is that we get a slope analysis, and it analyzes the total area in each of our slope categories, and then it sets an allowed disturbance area that is a full total in terms of the acreage. You do the calculations that reduce your allowed disturbance based on the slope category. But at the end of the day, the disturbance can be in any of the slope categories. but it cannot exceed the maximum, which for this particular request is the 161.69 acres. And so we have that kind of maximum cap. However, there is a provision that requires a 2-to-1 mitigation in terms of open space if you are proposing to disturb slopes of 30% or greater. And so that's where we have this 29.56 acre area that is proposed to be disturbed. And so that does have to have a 2-to-1 open space mitigation measure applied to it. And there is ample area of open space that is being provided across the Five Ridges project site where those slopes from that kind of undisturbed open space perspective can be accommodated to offset that 30% slope disturbance.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. That clears things up. All right, any other question? Commissioner West.
Yes, Sienna, I guess once more on that 30%, you said the mitigation of that 29.56 acres that's proposed to be disturbed gets taken up in other open areas. Is that open area at a 30% slope, or is there no limit as to what that slope is in the area that's going to serve as mitigating areas?
So the areas that are going to accommodate open space generally tend to be located in the northwestern portion of the Five Ridges project site. And that location has slopes that are generally less than 30% in that particular area.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, is the applicant with us tonight, and would they like to add anything to the staff report?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. For the record, Mike Rayleigh with Christie Corporation. Also with me is Scott Christie, the project engineer, as well as Blake Smith and Blake Smith Jr., the applicant. I think Sienna did a very thorough job in her staff report, and we're available to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Do there any commissioners have questions? Commissioner Reed.
Yes, I should unmute myself. I have a question based on some of the public comment that we received through email, and I guess it would be a question. I don't know if you happen to have a hydraulic engineer on the call, but several homeowners that live below the development expressed concerns with drainage, flooding, water runoff, and in particular, silt or sediment. And I know the plans were reviewed and staff determined that the slope stabilization treatment will limit the erosion, sedimentation, and other hazards. But without getting too technical, can you kind of describe how you plan to mitigate their concerns?
Chair Pritsos, if I could respond to Commissioner Reed. We do have engineering staff that is available to walk through overall drainage, runoff, and erosion plans. So with that, I'll go ahead. I know Janelle Thomas, our senior civil engineer, is on this call. I'll go ahead and let her chime in on those aspects of the project.
Yeah, Commissioner Reed, this is Janelle Thomas, Senior Civil Engineer for the record. And you are correct that there were some comments made regarding the drainage, which is anticipated to come down the north slope into the Washoe County properties. And That area has been analyzed. It is, as Sienna stated earlier, anticipated that the slopes are going to be treated with a bonded fiber matrix, which will, help to mitigate any kind of erosion issues. Regarding the drainage on that site, the drainage basin, which feeds on that northern plain there, it is actually going to either remain the same area and potentially decrease due to the fact that the developer is planning to cut the roads and build the structures on that along that northern edge. And all of the proposed structures and roadways within the development, they all are anticipated to drain within the development and generally to the south and towards Pyramid Way. They've taken several really extensive steps in order to mitigate the sediment transport and then really knock down that peak flow from existing to proposed conditions. And so really that concern shouldn't be that relevant, I guess, in this particular case. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I just wanted to address some of the concerns from the homeowners.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple questions for the applicant, if I may. Mike or Blake, were you able to obtain any Google Earth imagery showing the topography of the site and how the proposed amendment to the CUP may affect in the grading plan? What I was kind of looking for was kind of more visual representation of what this proposal looks like. Just kind of seeing if there were any information. I saw the two pictures that Sienna had included with the cross sections. Just kind of curious if you were able to find any more additional visual representation.
Yeah, Commissioner Carey, this is Mike Rayleigh with Christie Corporation for the record. We did, you had brought that concern up at the study session. Unfortunately, to do those and get them done correctly, it's a fairly extensive process. If you lay the grading plan, for example, onto a Google Earth 3D image, the grading plan is a 2D image, so it doesn't show an accurate depiction. And then when you kind of try to mend the two together, Google Earth begins to distort. So typically what we would do is have an architectural renderer do a 3D model of the grading plan to do that. And unfortunately, there was simply not enough time between Tuesday and tonight to get that work completed.
Okay, thank you. Next question was, I'm just kind of curious in terms of concentrating the development on the site, is if it's possible to, with the new grading plan, to stay within the existing areas in the conditional use permit and avoid the impacts to the hillside and ridgeline features that you're proposing. I was just kind of curious, you might be able to kind of walk us through if it was possible to concentrate this proposed grading in the previously disturbed areas. And
there, I think there's a lot of factors that come into play there, and Blake may want to speak to this too, but when you look at the balancing of the site in terms of the earthwork, how the site drains, it really, I think this layout is more efficient in terms of addressing some of the other city policies and engineering concerns. And I don't know if Blake, if you want to expand on that, but I think this makes for a better plan than what was approved previously in terms of how it all lays out as a whole.
Yeah, and Commissioner Carey, this is Blake Smith Sr. speaking. as far as, keep in mind that the existing conditional use permit allows us, we're basically only adding 18 acres to this. We probably should have put it in, to be quite honest with you, we should have put it in the original one. The grading that is approved already basically touches on, I'm going to say 85% of villages 8, 9, and 10. There was a quadrant in the corner up there that we acquired an additional 40 acres that we did not put in the original map. But to address your question, as far as can we concentrate it, we're doing small lots up here. If you recall, the development agreement has a minimum of 1,200 units we have to develop to and a maximum of 1,800. These areas up here that we're going into is allowing us to maintain that 1,200 minimum. We're actually trying to put some smaller lots in some of the areas to even get it over the 1,200 unit. But the additional 18 acres that we're adding here is a component that we need to actually make it so that we can develop up into that 1,200 unit range at that point. But the original approval that we did, and Sienna, help me, was it 160 acres, and we're increasing this by 18 acres. That is a critical component to us to kind of finish it off. If we just stop with the existing CUP, it would be kind of a broken area as far as development in there. And this is really more of just kind of a cleanup item to go ahead and get that village 8 and 9 little corner up there taken care of.
Thank you for that, Mike. Thanks, Blake, as well to appreciate additional information. My last question, if I may, Mr. Chair, thank you, is just curious, in the 19 acres that are proposed to be disturbed, what type of housing product are you envisioning to construct in these areas?
This is Blake Senior again. I think they would be, well, they are not high density. If you recall, Commissioner Carey, we went down and in the I'll call it the gut of the village, Village 5, we changed to M2 zoning, and we also changed villages 1A and 1B to M2. That's a high density product. We're talking 7 to 12 units to the acre down there. These will be more standard sized lots. They'll be in the, what is a typical lot? 45, 55, 65, 100 square foot lots. More of a standard size home up there. We have not identified the architecture or the builders. We're in dialogues with builders, but we don't have a definitive product yet. But it's going to be more of a standard style lot in there versus the high density stuff that we're building down below.
Thank you very much, Blake. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Sienna, did I see your hand raised?
Thank you, Chair Pritzos. I wasn't quite sure if that would be. I just wanted to, if you'll allow me, just add on that the 19.8 acre increase in the disturbance area is located in a portion of the Five Ridges project site that is zoned SF6. So that is a zoning district that allows for detached single-family residential units. Just to chime in.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions? Mayor Lee.
Chair Pritzos, I would just like to say that for the record, Commissioner Rawson has joined this meeting.
All right, thank you very much. All right, well, if there are no other questions, this is a public hearing item, so we will now move on to public comment. Madam Secretary, could you please read the meeting announcement?
So again, the telephone number for call-in participation is 1-669-900-6833, and the meeting ID number is 917-2859-2638, and you would press *9 to request to speak. Ms. Martinez has also shared the slide with the Zoom link if you wish to join by the link. As stated previously, we have received several emails. Staff has received several emails associated with PCN 19-0040. Some of those have requested that the clerk read the emails into the record. And I will read those now. There are 5 of them. So bear with me. The first one, he also submitted photographs. So as I'm reading this, Ms. Martinez will be showing the photographs that he provided along with his email. So I will begin now. This email is from Dan and Mindy Flanagan. It starts, Mr. Crittenden and Ms. Reed, we are in opposition of the request for the following. The applicant did not supply adequate information detailing the overall long-term effects of the expansion to the adjacent property owners. The applicant has not demonstrated adjacent dust or erosion control measures for the groundwork completed to date. The applicant has not modified or revised the traffic study showing proposed impacts as a result of the expansion request. The applicant has not demonstrated the fiscal ability or bonding to remediate or revegetate any future disturbed area and or resulting litigations due to property damage if applicant becomes insolvent. The rockery walls proposed by the applicant have been known to fail, which could render damage to the residents below the ridgeline. The City of Sparks has not amended section 20.04.011, slopes, hilltops, and ridges, for the subject site as is required to do so. Once amended, the City of Sparks is creating a double standard by not allowing the visual impacts under section 20.04.011 on the City of Sparks sides of the ridgelines, but ignoring 20.04.11 for the Washoe County sides. Improper noticing to residents under Sparks Administrative Code, Chapter 20.05, specifically Section 20.05.03, Section B. Applicant should be required to amend their allowable disturbance areas only on a subdivision by subdivision basis in order to remedy the above concerns on a case-by-case basis. Respectfully submitted, Dan and Mindy Flanagan. Moving on to the next email. This email was received from Violet Richards. Dear Ms. Reed, we are opposed to the proposed changes in the Five Ridges project. We have lived on this property for 38 years. We have, of course, seen a great deal of change and growth in our time here, however, not like this growth. Part of living on a ranch property is being able to see the mountains and the sky. With the proposed changes, that will no longer be possible, not to mention the drainage issues we may face. I ride my horse to the top of those mountains that you want to put houses on. I look down on the valley I have spent so much time in. I will no longer to be able to do that because you want to take those mountains, flatten them out, and plaster them with houses. Our drainage ditches out here are known for flooding every 3 to 4 years. So profoundly that Pyramid Lake Highway has had to be shut down and more than on one occasion leaving us with no way to access town. This will compound the problem. The traffic out here is congested at best of times, and this will again compound the problem. In short, we are vehemently opposed to this project. Thank you for your time, Violet and William Richards. Moving on to my next email. This is from Rock Cole. My biggest concern with enlarging the disturbance limits on that hillside will be drainage through our properties. Although I do not think it will increase the drainage, it will change the flow pattern through our property. My biggest concern is the silt. That hillside has been rained on for thousands of years and the silt has effectively been washed away. I have videos of some of the floods, cloudbursts, and torrential rains we have had a few years ago, and they will show the same thing, clear water flowing off the hill onto my property. We have built cutoff ditches and other things to mitigate the water flows over the years. What concerns me is the thousands of square feet of disturbance, loose dirt, and the silt that will come down to our property. A detention basin would help, but then would also channel all of the outflow to one spot, causing erosion down the hill and onto our properties in areas where the water once traveled in a mosaic pattern. I myself have over $100,000 worth of landscaping and rock lined ditches and drainage ways. It is steep hillside, not allowing water to sink in. So the water begins to flow immediately in a weather event. Mud and silt will flow onto my property and will destroy 25 years of work. The mud will most likely be impossible to clean. And once the alluvial fans of mud start to flow off the construction site, it will be there forever. And every subsequent storm will send silt down to my property. It will be an ongoing problem with no fix available. Who is going to be liable for that? It will be directly due to the new construction, since I have proof that only clean water comes off that hill in a weather event. What about a cloudburst during construction, which we get often? When the disturbed area is completely exposed, a cloudburst would be devastating, sending an incredible amount of mud down that hill that silt fences and wattles won't stop. Who is liable for that? I am assuming everybody involved. It will impact all homeowners along the hillside. What about safety? There is a steep hillside coming down to my home and others along this development. What about rolling boulders? How is that going to be handled? There has to be blasting. It is solid rock. What about dust? There are a lot of high winds here and they may come straight over that mountain towards our homes. I have never seen dust come off that hill and also have videos of showing zero dust blowing. Disturbing the top of that hill and down our side is a cause for big problems. How is that going to be addressed? I just wanted to be on the record due to the probability of the damage of my property and others below, all caused by this increased disturbance. Also, what is the city of Sparks' liability for approving such intrusive grading down a steep hillside with established homes and yards below? The city has approved disturbing the top of the hill. Please reconsider the top third of the hill, all for a few more homes. Granted, we are not residents of the city of Sparks, but we do have rights. The next email I will read is from Wayne Patterson. My name is Wayne Patterson. I reside at 7325 Patrina Way, Nevada. I am writing to you in reference to case number PCN 19-0040. I am adamantly opposed to this project. It was bad enough that you acceded to the wishes of the developer by overriding the decades of long protection of the ridge above my and other homes, but to consider expanding this project to include the destruction of more open space and steep slopes is unconscionable. Whatever your motivations for considering approval of this project, they certainly have nothing to do with the quality of life and the preservation of scenic beauty of the Spanish Springs Valley. The water runoff, vehicle traffic, noise, and light pollution are all negative impacts that are in total conflict with the preservation of what had previously been a key tenet of planning in the Spanish Springs area, quality of life. And for what? Profit and tax revenue? So what are the consequences if you approve this project? I can tell I'll be damn mad again, and I can't even vent my frustration with the city of Sparks City Council with a vote to remove any of you from office. I expect the valley floor will at some point look like Swan Lake in Lemon Valley. The traffic will be horrendous and dangerous. The views of the ridgeline will be destroyed as the developer turns the 5 ridges into the 5 plateaus. And we, in the Dolores Drive area, will be living in a fishbowl while all the peering eyes above probe our privacy like I'm sure no one but a depraved exhibitionist would welcome. So I am absolutely opposed to any expansion of this project. The final email that I will read is from Dana DiPello, and I apologize if I did not pronounce your name correctly. To whom it may concern, my family lives on Patrina Way and we object to the decimation of the ridges above our homes in this area. This goes against what the county has as far as saving ridge lines. The only thing is it would cause mass erosion. And quite another point is where the water is being taken from. We have concern for our private wells in the area being drawn down by this mass housing development. Not only is it a blight to view, not counting increased traffic, none of us were given notice when the project was first being considered. Myself and surrounding neighbors were completely against the whole project. However, seeing as you didn't see fit to stop the build out, we would kindly like you to deny the developer's request to destroy the ridgeline. So that is the final email that I had been requested to read into the record, Chair Pritzos. We can now move on to any callers who wish to speak live on this item. And I believe we have at least one.
We have Mike Eastman requesting to speak.
All right.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, very good. First off, I wrote an email and I would appreciate Marilee go ahead and read that after I'm finished speaking. I don't know why it was missed, but I'm very confident she has received it. Something on different tact. I want to let you know my name is Mike Eastman. I live at 10 Mack Street with one of the most impacted properties north of the project. I wish to go on record that I adamantly oppose any ridgeline and hilltop development, but very specifically object to the construction of the villages 9 and 10. These villages will be eyesores in what is otherwise beautiful terrain, even with the conditions this planning commission has required. With that said, I also want to address 4 issues that have come across in my reading of all documents. Planning Commission and 5 Ridges, please take note and make an effort to address these issues. If I'm incorrect, I'd like to be corrected. First, the 5 Ridges application, page 4, figure 4, says it depicts all 11 villages. It does not. Just a small error, but worth pointing out. Number 2, Exhibit 3, and that's the exhibits as initially laid out, not what you laid out tonight, but the planning figures, purports to show analysis, yet it appears to be incomplete for the lands west, northwest, and north of villages 8 and 9. That slope analysis, it needs to be done, and I'm wondering how completing that slope analysis for these lands affect your overall calculations so heavily relied upon to get the CUP approval. So please take a look at how extending and doing the rest of the analysis would make a difference. Your Exhibit 9 says the steep slopes on the north of Village 9 will be riprap. Exhibit 6 says it will be revegetated with EFM. The Planning Commission case summary is inconclusive. Tonight, it sounds like you're planning it to be EFM, but really, which is it? The Planning Commission's case summary, paragraph 16, page 16, paragraph 2 on hilltops and ridges. And you guys put a lot of weight on this. Says none of this project area has been designated significant by the city of Sparks. I request that you admit that this is true only because no one from the city of Sparks has requested that analysis be performed. As your case summary so clearly delineates, the subject property was not annexed by Sparks until 2018, well after any ridgeline analyses were completed. Comparing this ridge to many others you have designated as significant, this is clearly grander and more scenic than most of the others. You are violating the public's trust on a technicality. Will you acknowledge this? I would like to, again, request that you guys read my email letter. It covers slightly different approach, and thank you for your time.
Chair Pritzos, may
Yes,
I address that?
Yes.
We did receive several emails. A follow-up email from myself was sent to those which we received emails from, requesting that they let us know if they wanted their email read into the record or if they wanted to speak on their own behalf. At your discretion, I am happy to read his email. I will look to you for further direction.
I think in this case, I'll allow you to read the email into the record as well, since we read the others.
So again, this is the email that was received from Mr. Eastman. Dear Sparks Planning Commission, I respectfully request that you deny the Christie Corporation's application for an amendment to their conditional use permit. They are requesting a major revision to their original CUP that disturbs an even greater amount of the slope terrain. They are already degrading a major feature of our regional scenic beauty. To allow more terrain destruction would just add insult to injury. The Washoe County Master Plan prizes scenic quality, but clearly the Christie Corporation does not. From the Washoe County Master Plan, through cooperation, and this is in quotes, Through cooperation with the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners and the Washoe County Planning Commission, the Spanish Springs community will maintain and apply objective standards and criteria that serve to manage growth and development in the Spanish Springs in a manner that, bullet number 1, respects the rural heritage of the area by encouraging a rustic appearance and preserving scenic quality. Bullet number 2, respects private property rights. Bullet 3, provides a range of low-density housing opportunities. Bullet 4, provides open space and recreational opportunities. Bullet 5, provides local services and employment opportunities. And finally, bullet 6, ensures that growth is kept in balance with resources and infrastructure. The Sparks City Council and Planning Commission have thus far abandoned their stated objectives in conjunction with the Washoe County Master Plan in protecting the scenic quality. There are ridges throughout the Sparks area that never would have been built upon if foothills and ridges were not protected according to the Washoe County Master Plan, which states a planning principle is to protect foothills, mountains, river corridors, and other natural features. This latest venture on the old quarry site could have been attacked on a smaller scale that would indeed have respected scenic quality for the tens of thousands of regional residents. With the full assault on the top of the ridge, you've allowed for monstrous damage. Now, just because we've come this far in the planning process doesn't mean we have to bow to the Christie Corporation in their desire to knock down even more. I have another reason to reject the application. The application addresses decreasing ridge top height and moving the dirt and rock outwards to gain more flat space for homes. The cost is destruction of natural terrain and habitat and the presence of an even steeper terrain right at the property line of local residents. Nowhere in the document is erosion and runoff addressed and the effect on the properties below this project. This must be addressed, and if this project is approved, must be addressed and mitigated. We have the right to have significant assurances that this project, as requested, does not impact our properties. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you, Marilee. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak at this time?
I have a phone caller ending in 4479 requesting to speak.
All right. Caller, you appear to be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello? Hi, my name is Rock Cole. I sent in a letter, but I want to address a few things here. You know, I've been here for 25 years. I've lived through the flood of 97, the flood of 2007, and the torrential rains that we experienced a couple of years ago. I have video, and I would be happy to come down and show any of you this video. I have video of the water coming off that hill, and believe me, it roars. It sounds like the Truckee River here, but it's clean. The video clearly shows it's clean water. You cannot, I'm in the construction business. You cannot disturb all that ground at the top of this hill down 90 vertical feet. Are you kidding me? What do you think's going to happen when water hits a 2-to-1 slope, especially during construction when it's not even stabilized? It's going to flow. And it's going to flow fast, and it's going to bring mud down into terrain that has already had all the silts washed off. It's gravel, it's bushes and rocks. It doesn't flow silt or mud. And once it does flow silt or mud, then it's going to be there forever. Even if it's on their property, that silt and mud will sit there, and the next rainstorm, it will flow again and destroy 25 years of work. I have videos of my valley gutter that runs perpendicular to this hillside, flowing at about 10% or about 10 times capacity. And it's clean water. Like I said, love to show you the videos to prove it. So with this development, All I have to do is take video of chocolate milk coming off that hill, and I have a strong case. And it will. I'm in the business. You cannot reseed soil from the deep earth and rocks. It won't grow. You can't reseed it. Even mechanical stabilization, fabric with riprap on top is going to get water underneath it, and it's going to flow. The bottom of the riprap, any disturbed area, is going to flow silt, and it's going to destroy mine and other people's properties. I have a tremendous amount of work into this place, and I will take action, believe me. And then you say that I thank you, Commissioner Carey, for bringing up RC 28, because there's several slopes greater than 15 and 30% above my home, not to mention a gorgeous rock outcropping that they plan to take 40 vertical feet off of and flatten it out, all for the sake of a few more homes. Listen, you guys gave them carte blanche, everything they wanted. Please make them stick to it. They've got plenty of land and plenty of room to build. Please don't give them this, because it will be devastating, and it will, I guarantee you, have ramifications. I appreciate your time, and I hope you make the right decision. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak at this time?
I see no additional requests to speak.
All right, with that, then we will close public comment. Is there any further discussion?
There was one person who raised their hand last minute.
Oh, all right.
Okay, so Kyle, I apologize, I can't pronounce your last name, but I will allow you to speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I live at 7285 Patrina Way. I've been listening to all of the other comments. I just wanted to let you know that I oppose what the expansion that they're trying to make here. I think it's, they've done a pretty good job with what they're going to propose and what they're going to build, and it's going to destroy our hilltops as it is, and to add additional homes that come further down to our property is going to destroy the landscape as well. I am in agreement with the dirt and the mud and the silt that'll be coming down into our backyard. We spent thousands of dollars to retain the landscape behind our home, which has flooded several times. Again, we have video as well of that. And I just wanted to reiterate that I am opposed to this additional amount of property that they want to destroy. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who wants to speak at this time before we close public comment?
No additional requests.
All right, then I will officially close public comment. Is there any further discussion on the item? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the public comment and the discussion earlier and the questioning. I guess I'm a little concerned. You know, the request that I made for the visual materials, I don't think it was quite what I was looking for, and I don't know if particularly if I have enough information based on the public comment that we've heard and received today. I don't know if we have enough information to take action on this. I would be more comfortable if we perhaps tabled this to our next meeting to get some more information on on the visual impacts and what this would do to the hillsides in this area.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Carey. Any other discussion? Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, I'm also finding it difficult to meet finding C3, and I'm looking at some of the other findings, but definitely I agree with Commissioner Carey in this instance.
All right, Commissioner West.
Yes, I too agree with Commissioner Carey in regards to this and feel that, yeah, I can't make all the findings at this point in time and would definitely need to see some more information and the impacts, particularly as it, goes back to our goals and policy, RC 28. That one stands out for me quite strongly.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Kramer.
I agree with Commissioner Carey as well. And I also would like to know why it is now at this late stage in the game that the developer's coming back and saying, oops, we want to now develop more ridge tops. I'm a little perplexed at that, not knowing why they didn't look at that in the beginning of the development. So I would like to have a little bit more information and know why it is that now all of a sudden they're looking at this now, because they had plenty of time looking at the staff report and looking at how things had progressed, why they didn't look at this earlier. So I would like, I don't have enough information at this point to make that determination as well. So I'd like to bring it back.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Armando.
For the record, Commissioner Pritzos, members of the Planning Commission, Armando Ornelas. So I appreciate that you were looking for more information. From the staff perspective, I would ask that you be as specific as possible in terms of what that additional information is, so that we can work with the applicant to make sure that, if this is continued, and I would recommend a continuance to a date certain as opposed to a tabling of the item. If that's the direction that the Planning Commission is going. But again, if this is going to be, if action is going to be deferred, if you will, that you be as specific as possible. So for example, are we talking about the photo simulation and or other pieces of information, so that again, staff can work with the applicant to make sure we bring you what you're looking for at a subsequent meeting.
All right, thank you, Armando. So that being said, Marilee.
Sorry, Chair Pritzos, this is, I need to interrupt here. It's been brought to my attention that the caller that we allowed to speak, the 4479, did not identify herself. Before we lose that caller, for the record, I would like her to come back in and identify herself for the record.
All right.
It wasn't a her, it was a he.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
This is Rock Cole.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cole.
Can I just say one thing? The 19 acres.
This is unfortunately, this is not a public comment section, so we will not. I'm sorry, you're not be allowed to speak at this time. Armando, do you have something else, or is your hand still raised?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no worries. Okay, so who wants to take a crack at this motion? Commissioner Carey.
Sure,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Carey. I just want to note, because Armando noted, we could continue this to a date certain. Do we know yet if we're planning on meeting at the first meeting in May, or if it'll be the second meeting in May? Just for the motion.
At this juncture, we would plan on meeting the first meeting of May, which I believe is May 6th.
That is correct, Armando.
All right, Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that, Brandon and Armando. I'll take a stab at this. I hope I did it correctly. My apologies for throwing out table. I certainly don't want to do that. I guess I've been hanging around the legislature too much. Got my terminology mixed up. Okay, so I would make a motion to continue this request to the May 6th Planning Commission meeting and request that staff obtain a visual or a photo simulation of what the impact would be on the proposed, or what would the impact would be on the hillsides that are proposed in the cross sections. I would request a Google Earth overlay showing the topography of the site with the proposed grading plan overlaid on it. And I would also request, to the extent as much as possible, that the cross sections be amended to show the photographs of the specific ridge lines that correspond with the 3 cross sections that were in the staff report.
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Carey. Anyone want a second?
I'll second the motion.
Armando.
Chair Pritzos, if I may, I'd like to ask Ms. Reed to address whether she understands the additional information that is being requested and whether she has any comments on it before you take action on the motion.
Thank you, Chair Pritzos and Armando. I do have a quick question, just as a follow-up. Certainly, the Google Earth imagery with a grading plan overlay, that is fairly clear. But Commissioner Carey, you mentioned a photo simulation showing the impact of the development on the hillsides as shown in the cross sections. And then also the addition of photos to the cross sections. And just from a kind of a preparation perspective, a photo simulation usually takes a wider look. It wouldn't necessarily just be focused on the specific area of the hillside that the cross section is running through. So for clarity's sake, are you looking just for photos to be added to the cross sections, or are you looking for a full visual simulation? And if so, what would be the extent of that photo simulation?
Thank you. I would say the photo simulation, what I'm requesting is what the applicant had talked about this evening, and the time, and that they didn't have the time to put that together, and their staff member or whatever wasn't available to put that together. I think it takes probably a week or so. So I would request what the photo simulation, the full-on photo simulation that would be developed that the applicant alluded to. With respect to the cross,
just
with respect, go ahead, Brandon. Sorry, I didn't know if that.
And one thing, I don't know how any photo sim would work, but you know, Google Earth might be proprietary. I don't know what software would be used. I'd recommend being a little more vague, or you know, there's ortho or aerial photos that could be used that aren't specifically a Google Earth product. Just, I wouldn't want to narrow it, have it narrow into Google Earth if it would be a different product or a different software. Does that make sense?
Yes, I believe it does, and I appreciate that concern. I brought up Google Earth. I use that typically, and I know we did receive a public comment tonight that included Google Earth. So I would be willing to amend the motion, open up the motion to any sort of aerial photography, satellite photography that provides the kind of a 3D rendering of the topography is kind of what I'm looking for. Hopefully that's clear.
Armando, do you have something to add?
Chair Pritzos and members of the Planning Commission, and to Commissioner Carey specifically, one constraint just in terms of the photographs may be just access in terms of private property. So if it would, I would suggest to Commissioner Carey and the commissioner who seconded the motion that the simulation would be from the closest appropriate public access, the closest appropriate public road.
Yes, thank you for that, Armando. And in my motion, I tried to, with the terminology to the extent possible, try to alleviate that concern. I don't want staff going anywhere that's on private, or they're not allowed to. So I would agree to that. And then I guess to Sienna's clarification on what I'm looking for the cross sections and kind of the photo renderings, I would like to see on the same page with those three cross sections, what those ridge lines look like. And I understand that, the cross sections kind of go underground a little bit. I guess it would be kind of taking along the two pictures that you took from, I think it's the west and the south, to put those on the, to have those correspond with those cross sections, then add for that third cross section. Hopefully that's clear as mud.
I think we got it.
Brandon, do you think we need to state the motion with the changes that we?
Clarifications didn't have some of the other stuff. So sorry, Commissioner Carey, to put you in this position, but if you could try and, to the best of your ability, just synthesize everything that we've been talking about here, that would be great.
Happy to give that a shot, Mr. Chair.
Go for it. Thank
you. And I think hopefully the discussion and this back and forth on the record is helpful for staff. So I'll give this a shot again. I would make a motion to continue this item to the May 6th Planning Commission meeting. And I would direct staff to go back and find additional visual information to help the commission render its decision, including a full visual simulation as alluded to by the applicant that would take about a week to complete. That would also include a aerial or satellite representation that shows the topography of the site with an overlay of how the proposed grading plan looks on the subject site, and to amend the cross sections to include photography of the ridge lines that are proposed to be altered to the extent as much as possible where staff doesn't go on it's in publicly accessible areas or allowed with the permission of a property owner.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second my original motion or your motion. I'm so confused right now.
We have a motion. We have a motion by Commissioner Carey and a second by Commissioner Reed. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, Madam Secretary, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Pritzos?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Andriola?
Aye.
Commissioner Kramer?
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson? Commissioner Rawson, you're muted. You're muted, sir. You're muted.
Oh, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right, we will.
I think I got the vote.
What?
I wasn't called on to vote, Mr. Chair.
Oh.
After all that.
Commissioner Carey, I apologize. Did I really just skip over you? Commissioner Carey.
Aye.
All right, now motion passes unanimously. All right, we are going to move on to general business items. So we will move on to item 7, the City of Sparks 5-year capital improvement plan.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Let me share my screen. Okay. Does everybody see that first page of the presentation?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. For the record, my name is Brian Kaysen, Capital Projects Manager for the City of Sparks. I'm here today to present to you the proposed fiscal year 22 capital improvement plan. You do have the full plan in front of you that includes the plan for the next 5 years from FY22 to FY26. But my main focus today will be on this upcoming fiscal year with an emphasis on how the plan is in conformance with the Sparks Comprehensive Plan. The total proposed FY22 CIP is in the amount of just over $25.2 million. All right, it's not advancing. There we go. There we go. All right, before we jump into the different funds and projects planned for FY22, I do want to touch on the CIP planning process. First and foremost, it requires a tremendous amount of teamwork and is a challenge that is a year-round planning process. It's something we take great pride in because it's not only what we rely on to ensure our city infrastructure and facilities are kept in the best possible condition, but with a limited budget, it also requires that we use the budget available in the most efficient and cost-effective way. And whenever possible, we try our best to be proactive instead of reactive. I do want to reiterate that it truly is a team effort that requires a tremendous amount of planning, forethought, and multiple meetings with other departments. With that, I am very grateful for all the help I received from other staff members, consultants, and contractors. I would not be able to do it without them. These next 3 slides show some examples of how the proposed capital improvement plan is in conformance with the Sparks Comprehensive Plan. One of the visions within the comprehensive plan is maintaining an integrated connectivity with a maintained road network, which includes bike and pedestrian pathways. These are 2 examples of projects that have been completed over the last year that show how the capital improvement plan has implemented the comprehensive plan. The picture on the left shows the rehabilitation project that was completed on Prater Way, and the one on the right shows a pathway in North Sparks that has been rehabilitated. The vision to maintain a regional system of parks, natural areas, and open space is represented in the picture you see before you. A great example of how we will be implementing the comprehensive plan through the CIP is the All Abilities Playground that is scheduled to be constructed this summer at the Sparks Marina. It will be a welcomed addition to an already successful area. And then the vision to ensure Victorian Square functions as a vibrant downtown with living, shopping, restaurants, and commercial is represented by the projects that have been completed in the past and will continue into the upcoming fiscal year. One example is the Downtown Barricade Project, and another great example is the continuation of the Victorian Infrastructure Improvement Project. Lastly, one of the goals for the comprehensive plan is to maintain, or as necessary, upgrade the condition of city-owned facilities and infrastructure while maximizing their utilization. This is represented in many of our capital improvement projects that include HVAC replacement projects, remodels, electrical upgrades, and security upgrades. With that, I will go through a few of the funds that are included in the capital improvement plan. I'm not going to hit on every single one, but I'm just going to highlight some of the main projects and particular funds that we're going to be working on projects for this upcoming fiscal year. The first one is the Transportation Projects Fund, Fund 1401. We have just over $3.2 million in projects planned within this fund. The Transportation Division uses a what's called a pavement condition index. It's basically ranges from a PCI rating of 0 to 100, with 0 to 50 being for rehab projects, which includes the reconstruction of the entire roadway section. That picture to the lower right does include a road that will be rehabilitated. It's got a PCI, or it's an example of a road that would be rehabilitated. It does have a PCI of 22, which does fall within that 0 to 50 range. And then we have corrective maintenance, which is in the range from 50 to 64. This includes crack sealing, some patching, and mill and overlay. And then finally, a range of 65 to 100 is a roadway that would include preventative maintenance, such as a slurry seal and minor patching. The graph to the lower left shows the history over the last 15 years or so of the average PCI rating for the city of Sparks. Ranges from at the beginning from a 68 on up to the current average PCI of 81. This next slide shows you basically how the city's broken up into 5 areas that are rated with this pavement condition index. Essentially, the range within each of these areas ranges from 76 in the older areas of the downtown area where the roadways are older, up to the North Valleys, or North Sparks area with a PCI rating of 86. That graph on the right just shows each individual area going back to 2011 and how they compare to each other. This next slide is what we have planned for a rehabilitation project for FY22. The total cost is estimated at $1.2 million. It is located just to the east of McCarran Boulevard, north and south, on the north and south side of Green Bray Drive. And this does have an average PCI of 34, which falls within that 0 to 50 PCI rating. The next 2 slides show the areas that we'll be focusing on for corrective and preventative maintenance projects with a PCI rating of 50 to 100. And the first area here is just on the west side of Sparks Boulevard and just to the north of Disk Drive and the south of Los Altos Parkway. And then another area near Desert Hills Drive, just to the southwest of Los Altos Parkway. And then lastly, the 4 different areas just to the west of Sparks Boulevard. Here is Sparks Boulevard right here. Here is Vista Boulevard right here. And here's Los Altos Parkway. And so there's an area in the Canyon Parkway area, the Kimberlite Road area, San Marino Drive area, and Goldie Way. And again, this is for corrective and preventative maintenance with a total cost of about $700,000 for this preventative maintenance, these corrective and preventative maintenance projects. The next fund that I'll talk about is really the Community Development Block Grant Fund, or CDBG. This is where we have low to moderate income of the residents in that area of greater than 51% of the residents that live within that area. We get a grant every single year, and hopefully we continue to get those grants to basically redo the concrete curb and gutter and sidewalks and the roadways within those areas. We've broken it into 5 different phases. On the south side is in redevelopment area 1, which we also have an additional $300,000 to combine with the grant so that we can get basically a better bang for our buck and get more cost recovery from a larger project. And then in collaboration with the Transportation Division and the Utility Enterprise Fund, we have basically projects that are where we're trying to be proactive with the utilities that remain within some of the roadways. This particular plan for the next 5 years includes these ones in color, these streets in color, and then the gray streets are actually ones we previously constructed in the past, and that does include replacing the utilities within that area as needed, along with replacing the roadway structure and the concrete curb and gutter. And it's not always every bit of it, but we replace what needs to be replaced. And then sanitary sewer project in Fund 1631. One project to highlight is a design project to basically redo the sanitary sewer system within the roadways along East Quail Street, Greenbrae Drive, Probasco Way, and then along Boise Drive. And then lastly, within this fund, we have a sewer system rehab program that we include basically on a yearly basis. And in the FY22, we are going to focus on cured in place pipe, or CIPP. These next couple slides actually show you an example of what that is. So this slide shows some existing sanitary sewer lines that have shown a lot of deterioration over the years. There's a lot of rocks and basically deterioration of the pipe within the pipe. This next slide shows you a new concrete pipe versus a cured in place or CIPP pipe, where they essentially extrude a liner through the center of the pipe, and through a chemical reaction, the pipe hardens and becomes essentially a PVC pipe. And it lasts for a very long time and has a good smoothness ratio to allow the material to flow through very easily. The next one, the storm drain projects, Fund 1641. We have a couple different projects here planned. The manhole CCTV assessment project, where allows staff to go through and basically assess the different manholes throughout the area and determine whether or not they're leaking or not, and whether they need improvements to be made, along with a storm drain master plan update, which allows staff to be able to plan for the future of what projects may be put in the capital improvement plan. And then we have the river flood project. We have a design project to basically look at flood improvements for the North Truckee Drain, which runs from just north of I-80 up to Prater Way along Sparks Boulevard. And this is in coordination, or will be coordinated with the RTC Sparks widening project that will be coming in the future. The next fund, the Capital Projects Fund, Fund 1404. This particular fund is broken into 3 different areas, one being Fund 1404A, which is the facilities and equipment portion of the fund. This is funded through a 2.5% general fund transfer, and we do have just over $1.9 million in projects planned within this part of the fund. And then we have 1404B, which is the IT hardware portion of the fund, and that's funded primarily through marijuana business license fees. And we have just over $274,000 worth of hardware replacement that is coming in the next fiscal year. And finally, 1404C, which is IT software, that's also funded primarily through the marijuana business license fees. And we have $379,000 worth of software products to pay for over the next fiscal year, with a total cost to fund 1404 of just over $2.5 million. Just to hit on a couple projects we have in 1404A, one of them being a replacement project for replacement of tasers within the police department. This is a 4-year program to replace all the tasers at $100,000 per year. Then we have sidewalk sweeper and snow removal equipment, which is shown in that picture over to the right. This is a very important piece of equipment that's going to help maintenance to maintain the sidewalks within the city of Sparks, particularly along Veterans Parkway and along the river corridor. We do have $60,000 within this particular fund, but there is additional funding provided by a grant, and that is for $190,000. So the total amount for 2 of these pieces of equipment is $250,000. And then we have an HVAC replacement project over the City Hall Legislative Building, and then some miscellaneous other projects that you can see on the 5-year plan that you have in front of you, for just over $1.9 million, as I said, previously stated. And then the Parks Projects Fund, Fund 1402, we have this fund, which is the funding sources: franchise fees, Golden Eagle rental and lease fees, along with marijuana licensing fees. This one's also broken into a couple different areas. One is the primary fund, which is for most of the parks facilities and equipment upgrades and things like that. We do have a carpet replacement for ALF for $25,000, some lighting upgrades at Larry D. Johnson Community Center, along with bike path rehab money, as I talked about earlier at the beginning of the presentation. We go through and basically come up with a plan for the bike path and ensure that that bike path is maintained appropriately. And then the Golden Eagle Regional Park Fund, this particular one, our main focus next year is to replace the turf on Field 9. And I do have a overhead view of that, of Golden Eagle, just to show you where Field 9 is at, which is right here. It's a multi-use field. The gray areas are areas that have previously been replaced. And then we have a plan going out to at least FY28 to show what we plan on doing to replace the remaining turf within Golden Eagle Regional Park. The next one, the Park District projects, funds 1406, 1407, and 1408. This map shows you and reminds you of the delineation between each of the park districts. Park District 1 is essentially west of McCarran Boulevard and west of Sparks Boulevard as you go up into North Sparks. And then Park District 2 is east of that line, and Park District 3 is up in North Sparks. With one project that we are going to be focusing on is a new park at Black Hill called Black Hills Park for $600,000, and this is just northeast of Golden Eagle Regional Park. And then we have the Victorian Square Room Tax Fund, or Fund 1415. Funding through this is from all the hotel taxes, or from hotel taxes throughout the city of Sparks. We are going to be funding a program for Victorian Square, for the Victorian Square Barricade Project. We have $900,000 in this fund, along with an additional $700,000 in RDA 1. In RDA 1, we're actually trying to manage that fund and then make sure we maximize the funding available within this particular fund, because it will be discontinued after fiscal year 23. So this fund is funded through property taxes in the downtown area. We have additional funding for the barricade project of $700,000. We have some funding for design of the Nugget Event Center forecourt area, which I'll show on a map that's coming up next. And then Victorian Amphitheater Phase 2 design. This is the amphitheater in this picture. And to minimize vandalism within that amphitheater when we're not having events, we're going to try and design some sort of enclosure where we can close that off appropriately when we're not having events. And then we have the Victorian Square Infrastructure Improvement Project, Section 2C for $800,000 to continue those infrastructure improvement projects along Victorian Avenue. And finally, this is the additional funding I was talking about for the Community Development Block Grant for $300,000. In this overview map, it shows the different sections for the infrastructure improvement projects we've not only done in the past, but are currently working on and plan for the future. So all the gray areas are areas that we've already completed, or as we're getting ready to start on Section 4, which goes from 15th Street to Victorian Plaza Circle over in this area. And then we have the plan for this coming fiscal year is to work on the south side of Victorian Avenue from roughly the amphitheater over to Pyramid Way. This is the forecourt area where we're anticipating this to be a year-round venue. And so we're gonna have a little bit different look to this to somewhat match what we're doing over in Victorian Plaza and try and make this a little bit more interactive. And then in redevelopment area 2, we actually have, as I spoke of at the beginning of this presentation, the All Abilities Playground, which will be a fantastic addition to the Sparks Marina. This is a 3D rendering of that particular All Abilities Playground. We do have previously funds that were from a previously approved FY20 CIP, along with about $200,000 worth of grants that we've received over the last couple of years. And with that, we're still going to be a little bit short on the funding. So we are proposing to have $150,000 come out of RDA, or redevelopment area 2, to fund this project so that we can get it going this summer and start construction. With that, that concludes my presentation, and Staff does recommend that the Planning Commission find the proposed capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2022 to 2026 in conformance with the Sparks Comprehensive Plan and forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have. And I also do have Amber Sosa and John Erickson available if you have any specific questions about the utility or transportation fund.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. Commissioner Reed.
Hi, Brian. I just had a question with some of the anticipated federal funding that might come down. Do you guys have some shovel-ready projects that would be eligible for some of that funding?
We do. John Erickson, I believe, is on the line, and he would be able to speak to that a little bit better than I would. You're on mute. Oh, there we go.
Good evening, Commissioner Reed. Yes, we have submitted some projects for federal funding at both Tom Wharf and road projects, and that we are also looking at some additional funding that has just recently come out in the last couple of days. And I will be working with our lobbyists back in Washington here. Actually, I've got a phone call tomorrow to start to develop additional projects to submit to Washington for federal funding.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, any further questions? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions for Brian. First question I had was Project 221694. That's the Marina Park landscape path modifications and upgrades project. Brian, I'm curious, what does this project include? What improvements are going to happen with the path? And do any of these upgrades with this line item include anything having to do with the Holly Quick Memorial Garden? That area of the park's been closed for like 18 months now. I was just curious what that project entails.
Yeah, so we do have separate funding that we are using redevelopment area 2 to complete a project for the Holly Quick area to essentially replace or build a new rockery wall right in front of the existing one that is having problems. I actually honestly just got done reviewing the plans from the consultant, and as soon as he gets those final plans done, then we are planning on going out to the bid with that here in the very near future. So we'll be replacing the stairway, reconfiguring the stairway a little bit so that it enters in a more efficient way. And then also adding basically an ADA walkway or ADA connection from the parking lot to the existing sidewalk. And then in terms of the Marina Pathway funding, that is money we have available every year, and we do look at not only the pathway for areas that we may need to replace. We do have that development on the east side with Legends and the casino and different things that are going on that we've held off doing any major work on the pathway over there because of that. And then also that does include potentially items that just come up throughout the year at the marina that have problems. Like we had the fishing dock. We have staff that's been working on doing some upgrades to the fishing dock and some of the buildings there. So that money is used for more than just the pathways. But we don't have any specific plans for it, but it's something we look at as the year progresses to see what we may need to look at.
Thank you very much for that. My last question was, I was very glad to see that there's a $750,000 line item in the IFSA #1 budget that's earmarked for the purchase for land for Fire Station #6. Last year, I think I asked you about this. There was some discussion about the design was underway for that fire station, and I was just curious what the status of that project may be this year and when the city might be closing on that land purchase in the next fiscal year.
So the the design that you're speaking of from last year was preliminary design to basically get an idea of what size of building we need, what we may need in there, what our construction costs might be. So we did receive that. The estimated construction costs for the building itself are just shy of $6 million. And then for design of the actual facility is about $600,000. And then of course the line item for purchasing land. So we got to purchase land first. This is going to allow John Martini and management to go and negotiate with the developers in that area and try and secure a piece of land. First of all, we're looking at roughly a 2-acre piece of land. And then I was instructed to basically put money in for fiscal year 23 for design for that particular project in 1404, which is the Capital Projects Fund, and then also construction money in fiscal year 24 for that particular project. That way we'll see where we're at budget wise, and Neil and council will make their decisions on what they may be doing for funding for that particular facility.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Carey. I think the next hand I saw was Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, thank you very much for all the information. I see as a recreationist out at GURP, thank you for the replacement of the turf. Long overdue on most of those fields. And I see that field 9 is the first one, and anticipating the other adult softball fields after that. Is the turf that's going to be used more significant and longer lasting than the previous turfs that were out there, I'm assuming?
Yes, we have basically we definitely look at the turf and the quality of the turf and what is installed. Those previous fields did have some potential, I wouldn't call it problems, but basically it didn't last quite as long as we had anticipated. But we do look at that certainly, and we have a consultant that's constantly letting us know what different types of materials are available as we move forward.
Thank you. Thank you for looking at that, because I know that being out there as often as I have been and am, it's really nice to see that you guys are taking a stab at that and making sure that we have good playing fields out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Commissioner West.
Yes, again, Brian, I do appreciate the comprehensiveness of this presentation and the projects selected. It looks like a good variety of improvements. But in particular, I was just wondering on the drainage project along Sparks Boulevard, is that primarily going to be undergrounding the drainage ways through there to allow for expansion of Sparks Boulevard?
I'll let John Erickson answer that. He has a little more information on that.
Yeah, Commissioner West, we've got 2 options we're looking at currently. We could incorporate the project with the RTC widening, and then also incorporate it with as a standalone project. It really is to mitigate the backwater that occurs from the river and keep it in a box culvert. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be constructed because of the Sparks Boulevard widening. It has to do with the backwater coming off the Truckee River during the 100-year storm event.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Commissioner West. Any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Brian. That was a very thorough presentation. I had one really quick question on that new playground at the marina. Where along the marina is that going in?
It's actually going to replace the existing playground that's on the northwest corner of the marina.
Oh, all right, thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, seeing none, looking for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
All right, go ahead, Commissioner West.
I move that we approve the city of Sparks capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2022 through 2026 I don't know if we have to actually approve it. Or we ask for it to be moved forward, that we agree with the plan. Would
Commissioner Carey, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may be able to answer Commissioner West's comment. I think we need to find it in conformance with the comprehensive plan and forward a recommendation to the council. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind taking a stab at the motion.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to find the proposed capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2022 through 2026 in conformance with the Sparks comprehensive plan, and to forward a recommendation of approval to the city council.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Carey. Any seconds?
I'll
Second that.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Carey and a second by Commissioner West. Madam Secretary, may we please have the roll?
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Yes, Commissioner Carey.
May we have discussion on the motion before the vote?
You're right. Any further discussion? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to get through this quickly. I really appreciate this exercise every year. I think this is good. I just wanted to couple comments. I was kind of disappointed to see that the sidewalk rehabilitation line item remains flat through 2026. I think we've made some good strides in increasing that funding, and I very much appreciate that additional investment from the city, but I'd like to see maybe that be increased next year or in future years. I think that'll help with walkability and support goal C3, policy C4 of the city's comprehensive plan. I'd also like to see some more funding dedicated to the traffic safety item. That's item 220690. In the past couple CIPs, looking back, this has been at $50,000 a year. And we hear a lot of concerns on this commission about traffic and traffic safety. And I'd like to see, if possible, greater investment than $50,000 on that. I think more funding for traffic safety in this line item would help support policy C10, policy C3, goal C1, and goal C2. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Carey. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we have a motion from Commissioner Carey and a second by Commissioner West. So, Madam Secretary, may we please have the roll? You're muted.
Commissioner Pritzos,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Andriola,
Aye.
Commissioner Carey,
Aye.
Commissioner Kramer,
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Brian. All right, moving on to item 8, consideration and possible action on the City of Sparks annual report for 2020 to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency.
Thank you, Chair Pritzos. Jim Rundle, Planning Manager, here to present on that item. I have an hour-and-a-half presentation. Hopefully that's what you were looking for, Chair.
Of course.
Okay, fantastic. I'll get started then. Chair Pritzos and the rest of the Planning Commission, I'm here to present on the 2020 annual report for the City of Sparks. This is a requirement from the Nevada Revised Statutes that we provide this to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency. Our motion that we are requesting that the Planning Commission consider as a move of endorsement of the report that you have in front of you today. The annual report outlines activities that the City of Sparks and the Redevelopment Agency have gone through in the last year. The report is organized to respond to the principles and goals in the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. As some of you may know, the City of Sparks was incorporated in March of 1905 and now covers over 36 square miles. It is home to a population of over 103,000 people. And I'm sure Governor Sparks was anticipating such a size when he had his barbecue and during the incorporation of the City of Sparks. The city's budget has 22 different funds and is approximately $81 million at this point. The There are certain components that the annual report is required to respond to for regional planning. And the first one I'm going to talk about is population growth. The city of Sparks population grew by 38% between 2000 and 2010. I was a current planner during those times, and we were kicking out handbooks left and right, similar to the public comment you went through tonight. A lot of growth during those times. One of the things I wanted to talk about in population growth is the work that your staff works on through regional planning and the consensus forecast. The consensus forecast is an important component in forecasting the populations of our region, including the city of Sparks and our sphere of influence. We ultimately take those numbers and coordinate it into the regional transportation plan through something we call traffic analysis zones. So we can anticipate whether growth will occur in Stonebrook Phase 6 before it will occur in Kylie Ranch. We actually have those kinds of numbers, and we modify them every 2 years to ensure that we're identifying where the population will go and what type of infrastructure we will need for those areas. The Sparks Comprehensive Plan, as many of you were alluding to tonight, includes goals and policies and implementation strategies to ensure a variety of housing is maintained in the city of Sparks. Brian Kaysen, our capital projects manager, touched on many of the CDBG programs that we have at the city of Sparks, as well as a lot of the HUD funding that we receive to implement some of those components. Moving on to regional forum. It's very important that the region, Sparks, Reno, Washoe County, maintain a regional forum and manage growth to ensure that the Truckee Meadows TMSA, the Truckee Meadows Service Area, is implemented with a tactical strategy. More recently in the 2019 plan, they identified, we all agreed to implementing a tiered strategy. In 2015, the city of Sparks underwent a comprehensive zoning amendment, and we came up with the format of the zoning code which you see today. This was one of the tactical strategies that Sparks has used to ensure that the regional plan is implemented with a more consistent and predictable approach. The new zoning code reduced the number of conditional use permits that were required for certain uses in the city of Sparks, and that ultimately implemented a mechanism that provided for that consistency. There were certain uses that the Planning Commission would review that ultimately had the same conditions on them time after time. So we identified, instead of bringing that forward as a conditional use permit, let's simply adopt that use as permitted with use standards. And those are how they are approved today. In 2016, the city of Sparks completed the new Sparks Comprehensive Plan, which the Planning Commission recently amended and found in conformance with the 2019 regional plan, or at least forwarded a recommendation of approval. That process was approved at Regional Planning Commission, and then in March, the Sparks City Council approved the Sparks Comprehensive Plan, and so it is in conformance now with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. The Capital Improvement Plan, this was pretty coincidental that the annual report comes on the same day that the Planning Commission reviewed our CIP for the city of Sparks. The Capital Improvement Plan that you found in your packet identified some of the expenditures that the city of Sparks approved in the last year. I will report some of those more specifically to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency in a Excel spreadsheet, but they were included in your staff report today. This is a component that the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning staff will use to ensure that municipalities who are governed by the regional plan, including RTC, will be making expenditures in their CIPs that promote the tiered approach and investment is occurring within the TMSA. It is a mechanism that's just getting started, but it is a component that regional is excited about in terms of ensuring those expenditures are occurring inside the tiered approach that was approved in the 2019 regional plan. And of course, that tiered approach include a high concentration on the mixed use core, which is again, the highest priority of the tiered levels in the regional plan. So I'm going to talk about a few projects that the city has recently done in that in our mixed use core, the highest area of concentration by the regional plan. Many of you know that the DECO is coming upon completion. It's the project that went on top of the parking garage in downtown Sparks. It's a 209 unit complex, and we anticipate it opening soon. Mid-2021 is the anticipated opening date. The atrium is another project that is anticipated to complete in 2021. It is a 132 unit project and will include structured parking. Now, lastly, in redevelopment area 2, earlier questions were on the marina. That is actually over in redevelopment area 2. And the Azure apartments were are currently under construction. And those are 308 units. And we anticipate those being open sometime in 2021 as well. That's over there off of Marina Gateway. Another project in redevelopment area 2 is over off of Audi Boulevard. A 312 unit apartment complex is being constructed, and that's another one that we're excited may open this year, 2021. The regional plan annual report requires us to identify to regional planning how many annexations and master plan amendments we've done. We did 1 annexation in 2020, and we did 3 master plan amendments or comprehensive plan amendments. Next component we need to identify, we are implementing with the regional plan is a public service and facilities component. Now, Brian Kaysen went into some of those components, and there are 5 key elements that the regional plan looks to our comprehensive plan to make sure we are considering: potable water, wastewater, flood control, stormwater management, transportation, and schools. In the Sparks comprehensive plan, we aim to ensure that we are consistent and that the city can provide those facilities. One of the more important components to that is our water reclamation facility. I wanted to touch on a project that we are currently undertaking at the city of Sparks. It's been identified at the city council level. John Erickson can speak more details to it if you have questions, but the city has undertaken a manhole project. Many of the manholes in northern Sparks are in areas where there is a high concentration of groundwater, and there's groundwater infiltration. That groundwater ultimately gets into our sewer lines and makes its way in the sewer lines to Tumwharf, where it needs to be treated. So the treatment plant is treating clean groundwater. That reduces the amount of capacity at the plant and reduces the capacity in the lines. Currently, we are undertaking a manhole retrofit where the manholes are essentially a concrete layer is put in them and entirely stops the groundwater from infiltrating them. There is a substantial amount of gain in that, and we think that it could save over 5,000 gallons a day per manhole. So we are running those numbers now. We don't have concrete numbers to share with the Planning Commission today, but upwards of 5,000 gallons per manhole per day. Other component I'll talk about in regard to infrastructure is when the Planning Commission reviews a tentative map, they make all of the findings and make those considerations. Your staff is reviewing those impacts on our sewer system and ensuring that we can serve that project, that there is capacity. No different than when a project comes through and we identify that there is water. That often comes up at public comment. Well, we live in a dry area. We don't have the water to support this. We always ensure that that water will be come out of the pie of water rights, that if they don't have it, they won't receive a final map. And we also ensure that they have capacity in our system to provide sewer for those new units or the new commercial project. The next part I'll talk about is the natural resources. We have numerous policies that were cited earlier in the Planning Commission meeting tonight that the comp plan addresses the requirements to conform with the 2019 regional plan. Regional coordination. I wanted to speak to something specifically, and Chair Pritzos, I spoke about it on Tuesday. The component I wanted to talk about is Sparks does a good job in coordinating with its regional partners. We participate in meetings coordinated by regional planning. We attend meetings through RTC. And most recently, in a meeting on the Regional Transportation Plan, which was recently approved at RTC, your staff advocated one of the Planning Commission's requests in our earlier workshops back in the late summer or early fall to get Rock Boulevard identified as a multimodal corridor. And we were able to get that included in the RTP. And of course, that's just the component north of Interstate 80. But I thought that was a good example to bring up tonight on the successes that your staff is having with regional coordination. Last component that regional planning asks us to identify or make comment on is implementation of the 2019 regional plan. Your staff believes that we are implementing the regional plan. I believe the Planning Commission confirmed that in their approval of the 2020 Sparks Comprehensive Plan, and I believe the Regional Planning Commission affirmed that with their approval of our plan in conformance with the 2019 plan. Previous plans have been found in conformance, and they had a list of scheduled additions that we were required to come back and address. Our current plan does not have any list of scheduled additions. I believe you all received a copy of it through coordination with Mayor Lee, and I want to thank you, Mayor Lee, with your work and Sienna's work on completing that new plan and getting the documents available to our Planning Commission and to staff. I want to thank the team, Armando and George Graham and Brian Kaysen for helping me in completion, compiling the annual report for your consideration today. And Mr. Chair Pritzos, that completes my presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Jim. That was very thorough and fastest hour and a half I've ever had. All right, are there any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Carey. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jim, I noticed that in FY 2021 in the report, there was a small decrease in CDBG funds that were allocated by the city. Brian was talking earlier in his presentation on the CUP and alluded that there was no CDBG project in FY 22. I know in the past, CDBG has been a major source of funding for sidewalk rehab and really a lot of other great stuff. I was just kind of curious if what projects are proposed in the coming years and how that source of funding is being utilized by the city.
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Commissioner Carey. We're actually hoping to take the money from what would have been allocated currently, and that we could have done a project in fiscal year 22 and combining that with the money that would be allocated in 23 to have a higher proportion amount of money to be able to complete a bigger project than a smaller one. So while it looks as though we won't be doing anything with the money for 2022, that is the case. We do anticipate being able to do something of a larger scale with the money in the next year.
Thank you.
Armando, do you have something to add?
Just briefly, Chair Pritzos and members of the Planning Commission, Armando Ornelas. The CDBG allocation of the city has been, relatively flat the last couple of years. And, we fund other activities, including homeless services, as well as our housing rehabilitation programs. And so we're always spreading the money, and you just don't get the economies of scale with really small projects. So as Mr. Rundle was discussing, this year we're rolling it forward to combine with monies next year to do something at a somewhat larger scale. So there are other, to your question, Commissioner Carey, we fund other activities, including housing rehabilitation and homeless services.
Thank you, Armando. I hope the city gets more funding from Congress as well, too, from CDBG.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Carey. Commissioner West.
Yes, Jim, I want to thank you for this presentation. I also want to express my pleasure in seeing that the city is looking at projects like that manhole project. Tormorf needs expansion. We all know there's a lot of costs that need to go into that. And finding projects like that manhole project not only will improve the life expectancy of the manholes, but also help us to participate in reducing, additional costs that are going to need to go towards Tum Wharf, or at least allow, the proper sewage to be treated versus the groundwater. So thank you for you and your staff looking at those types of projects.
Sure, Commissioner West, and of course that is headed up by through John Erickson's team, and I was able to report on it. I'm more so coordinate with John, but that is John and Kevin Porter. I don't know if the Planning Commission has got to meet with Kevin Porter, but he is our utility manager, and he's heading up that project with his team. So thank you for the comments, Commissioner West.
Yes, thank you.
All right, any further questions? All right, see none, I will entertain a motion. Commissioner West.
Make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to move to endorse and forward to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Commission and Governing Board the City of Sparks Annual Report for calendar year 2020.
All right.
I second that motion.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner West and a second by Commissioner Kramer. Any discussion? That's some nice mute music. All right, seeing no discussion, Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Pritsos?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Andriola?
Aye.
Commissioner Carey?
Aye.
Commissioner Kramer?
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Jim, and to all of our staff for all the work that you guys put in. Okay, we will now move on to item number 9, which is the last of our public comment sections. So, Madam Secretary, would you please read the announcement?
Commissioner Pritsos, with all due respect, I don't see any public on the line waiting to speak. So would you still like me to read that?
I think if there are no public on the line, then we can close public comment.
And I just confirm with Ms. Martinez. Casey, you don't see any either, do you?
Would Lonnie be considered? Is he with a project?
Armando?
I think Mr. Feemster would be considered public. So Marilee, I would suggest you go ahead and read it just in case.
Okay, perfect.
I agree.
Okay, we are now in our final public comment period. This is for general public comment, and the telephone number for call-in participation for this general public comment period is 1-669-900-6833, and the meeting ID number is 917-2859-2638. You can also access the meeting through the Zoom link provided here on the screen, and use *9 to request to speak.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak at this time?
We have no requests to speak.
All right, thank you. With that, then we will close public comment and move on to item 10, announcements from staff and commissioners. So we'll start with staff.
None today, Chair Pritsos and members of the Planning Commission.
All right, thank you, Armando. Any announcements from members of the commission? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to extend a welcome to Commissioner Andriola. I promise you all our meetings are not this long and complicated. I also just wanted to put a plug in that the next webinar for the Nevada chapter of the American Planning Association is going to be on April 28th from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. the subject matter for this webinar is going to be state planning, what the state of Nevada is doing for land use planning. I will be participating, one of the panelists on the webinar, so I will shoot some information. It's a free webinar. I think there'll be some good information about state land use planning efforts at the state level. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Carey. Any other announcements?
I would just like
All
to
right.
thank you again for our first meeting, and I look forward to, serving and having, hour and a half be condensed to like 15 minutes. That was amazing. So thank you.
Yes, welcome. And we like to do baptism by fire here. So fun first meeting. All right, we will, if there are no other announcements, we will move on to adjournment. Can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All right,
Second.
any second? All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Reed and a second by Commissioner Andriola. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Pritsos,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Andriola,
Aye.
Commissioner Carey,
Aye.
Commissioner Kramer,
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. And with that, we are adjourned.
See you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good weekend.